Good evening. This is Defacto Review, a weekly analysis of Mongolia's latest political, economic, and social issues by economist and columnist Mr. Charasahan.
Good evening.
Good evening. And I'll be your co-host, Tikshirult. Today's topics are on whether the gasoline prices are affecting the inflation rate, the new hydropower plant in Bayan-Ulgii, and issues surrounding the education system. It is no secret that high levels of inflation have been affecting Mongolian households. The National Statistics Office has reported that the inflation rate in Mongolia has reached 16.1%, which is 9.5% higher than what it was at the end of last year and 1.5% higher than the rate at the end of May. The prices of food and beverages have increased by 19.5%, alcohol and tobacco by 9.3%, clothing and fabric by 14.1%, and so on. It is estimated that a substantial amount of the inflation is due to the price increase of imported products. The average prices for imported products have increased by 19.2% in the last year, and on the other hand, prices for fuel have also increased. The price for the most common type of fuel used in Mongolia, the AI-92 gasoline, has increased by 72% worldwide, but due to a deal with the Russian government, Mongolia has been receiving fuel at prices that are lower than the market price, and therefore is experiencing a 6% increase. So as we all know, gasoline prices affect every household in Mongolia. Does a price increase in essential commodities like gasoline usually have a big impact on inflation?
Oh yes, of course. In Mongolia, in particular in Mongolia, very deep impact on that. Mongolian inflation reason also very quite specific. One is related to China, the other is from recent time to Russia. Recently, the logistics transport cost increased almost 20 times, which mostly has to do with China. And that's why it increased the inflation. Year-on-year basis, it is 15%. Border is closed with China from time to time, in particular if high-ranking officials from Mongolia meet Dalai Lama somewhere. That's what happened with the speaker, at least last year. And there was a news on that meeting, but there was not official explanation came out from his office. Inflation estimation method is also the issue, because there is some 373 types of goods per monthly consumption of Mongolians used for statistics to estimate the level of inflation. And out of this 373 goods, 200 of them are imported goods. So the prices of import is immediately reflected. Thirdly, the inflation 60% before, now 50%. Inflation depends on 4 types of food items: meat, vegetables, fuel, and coal, or hard food. There were 60% of inflation, now 50%. But however, the half of those impact is to do with the food. Mongolia imports around 2 million tons of oil products, mostly from Russia, 95%, 5% from China. And among this whole type of gasoline and fuel, almost 1/3 is so-called that engine gasoline called IE92, for which the price will be kept for the rest of the year based on agreement with Russia. But that price, which is 2,390 MNT per liter, is already 65% higher than a year before. But this is the price compared with other type of gasolines like AI 95, 92, Euro standard, diesel and with other prices, this is not changed for last 6 months or so, because Mongolia have prepaid $100 million to Rosneft, which is providing 95% of our oil products consumption. So, because this prepayment of $100 million for April, May, June, we kind of made the economy of $36 million, which is not that bad. Now, the government, well, you remember we talked about the visit of Lavrov before the other talks with Rosneft. Now, they have been providing us with $840 per ton of that gasoline. Now, after all these negotiations, they gave us around 10% discount. And now, to the end of the year, it will be $830 per ton. And also, they will also provide discount for diesel. Diesel, by the way, is another 1/3 of our consumption, but it's very important food for agriculture and mining. So for mining, what the government has done is they will make 2 storage tanks at the border with China. And our main mining mines are in the south of the country, and they can import diesel from China directly themselves and have a storage at the border. But I think it's a question of timing. If they will do it, because in mining, 40% of their cost is diesel. So if the main mining companies import diesel themselves from China, it will be less dependence on Russia. So that's the situation. But however, I would say that, keeping the price at the same level after tax exemption, customs tax exemptions, and also the excise tax exempted, that means the revenue of the government becoming less, and at times they need to subsidize the price of AI-92, which is regarded people's fuel, because majority of population use for their cars exactly this type of low-octane benzene, we call it, because it's cheaper. So for Mongolian government, it's a key task not to increase price for consumption. But however, subsidizing in this way, keeping price in this way, will increase budget expenses unplanned, and that means the government will have more debt. That means either we will go again to IMF bailout, or if the government will pay, then they will require other sources of money.
Regarding inflation, what steps should be taken to limit further increase in the inflation rate?
Well, first of all, there are 2 factors not depending on us, China and Russia. With China, the country, though we receive 5% only of gasoline from China, but from 6 different companies. I think more negotiating leverage and space are there. So we should continue that. With Russia, we just dependent on one state-owned company, Rosneft, and we still need to negotiate with them to keep that 30% discount, which they were given before. This is 2 things we need to talk. The third thing is we should go ahead and proceed on time with construction of oil refinery in Bayan-Ulgii, which is being built by the loan from India, $1 billion, and which the deadline had extended due to Corona and other issues, and it should be within 2-3 years already completed. They have also need to build up more than 530 kilometers long pipeline from Bayan-Ulgii, where the Chinese company is producing oil and exporting it by trucks through the border to the east of the country. So all these negotiations to be exactly made on time, and all projects to be finished on time, then in that case, we will probably have a capacity of on a refinery that will provide a half of Mongolian domestic consumption of oil products.
Our next topic is related to self-reliance also. The Prime Minister of Mongolia, Oyun-Irten, has visited Bayan-Ulgii of Bayan-Ulgii province to get acquainted with the progress of Irten-Burung hydropower plant project. The Prime Minister noted that making the energy sector self-reliant, creating new energy sources, and replenishing the activities of the sector are top priorities for Mongolia. And one of the several plans to be built to support the energy sector is the Irten-Burung hydropower plant, which he said will be able to resolve the energy needs of the western region of the country. The Irten-Burung hydropower plant is expected to produce 366 million kilowatt hours of electricity annually, and with the commissioning of the hydropower plant, its output is estimated to produce energy that is 7 to 10 times cheaper than the current rate of energy imported from Russia and China. Mr. Jaralsahan, how do you feel about this project? And would you say that this is a good step towards self-reliance in the energy sector?
Well, we have several electricity grid, and the western one is most dependent on import from China and Russia, particularly on Russia. And these hydropower stations will play a substantial role to replacing import of Russia. And that is the capacity of this Irten-Burung power station. This is a very ideal place for the big rock mountains inside. However, it will impact on many herdsmen living. So, but however, it is 90 megawatt capacity power stations will be built by Chinese company. The tender is done already, selected, and they are supposed to start right now, but it is not started due to resistance of a local herdsman, which looks like now solved the issue. And it will cost some $280 million US. It's China is giving $1 billion US soft loan to Mongolia since 2015. The agreement is signed, and there will be several projects approved by the cabinet. And one of them is this Irten-Burung. And Irten-Burung is to be finished, if everything goes planned, within 2.5 years. And when it is finished, our western part of the country will be provided with sustainable power, electricity power for many years, and it will be 10 times cheaper than right now. So it will be very beneficial for Mongolia. There was also environmental concern because it will impact on several lakes. It will impact on our wetlands. So there were some discussions on that, but the government thinks that it will not be so much harmful. And the government took 28,000 hectares place under the state protection, and half of them, around 10,000 hectares, or it is, it's 10 kilometers square meter land will be covered with the water. And that certainly impacts on some 270 families, herds families, and the local administration was very much opposing, but the government have decided to compensate that for a certain sum. So that's still a situation, and also hydropower station is good for regulating whole grid. That's the only mechanism that can, lower and increase the capacity of providing energy.
As you've said, currently there are 270 households that live in the area designated for the reservoir, and they need to be relocated. Furthermore, 206 historical and cultural monuments in 84 locations also need to be relocated. And expenditures for the relocation of these households, their compensation, and also their relocation fees for historical and cultural monuments are planned to be included in the state budget from this year to 2025. Most of these households do not have land ownership or possession certificates. It is difficult to value their land and set compensations at the same rate as those with land certificates under the current law. And issues involving land are always very tricky. Traditionally, nomadic people, Mongolian families tend to move around the same area, but in many cases, they do not legally own the land that they live on. How do you think that we should tackle this issue?
Well, that's a very important issue. Mm-hmm. Not only for this Irten-Buring area, but it's all around Mongolia. Mm-hmm. This is mostly nomadic herdsmen live, and they follow better pasture land. It's very tricky to get one person on a particular part of pasture land to which other countries, other provinces people come, etc. Otter, how we call it. It's very hard to change this type of living with the current level of productivity of our animal husbandry. So it may be the case of like the settlement, like a farming settlement of the other European and other countries, but it will require quite investment, because for productivity increase of these herds, you need to have a very systematic, very sustainable feeding system, feeding industry, which some initial steps are made already in the country. There are several feed production companies. So it will take a time. But however, this land is to be somehow owned by particular, instead of by the state, very general name, it is to be somehow, must own some entity that will talk about this compensation issue like in Irten-Buring hydropower stations. So I think it's that land reform is to expect it soon. It must be done. Otherwise, we have a problem with the overgrazing the pasture land and the decreasing productivity of herdsmanship, animal husbandry, and in general deforestation of our pasture land, and which does not help altogether to the climate changes. But by the way, this Irten-Buring herds 270 families, and plus there's certain history, cultural heritage places. Altogether, estimation was some 9.5 billion MNT. Estimation is there, and it will, as you said, reflected already in the budget. But it's very expensive. It's around $2.5 million at the current rate. Not easy, but something. That's the reason I think the Prime Minister had visited recently the site of the station, power station, and I think maybe the groundbreaking will be during the Chinese Foreign Minister visit next month.
Our next topic involves education. The Minister of Education and Science, Mr. Ingematling, held a press conference this week and tackled issues related to education for all age groups. A recent issue that has flared up in Mongolia is the lottery to get into preschool. There are 241,000 children that are preschool age in Mongolia, which is defined as the ages between 2 and 5. 141,000 of them reside in the capital city of Ulaanbaatar. However, the city is capable of providing preschool education to only 106,000 of them, leaving 34,000 preschool children out of the education system. And this led to the lottery system that we know of, which has been reportedly riddled with corruption, with parents offering bribes to just have their children enrolled in preschool. The minister has spoken about plans to include non-state-owned preschool alternatives in the outreach programs starting this year. This means that children may be eligible for enrollment in private kindergartens or nursery schools through the government. And the minister has said that the funds appropriated for education, which includes 100 billion tugruks from the parliament, and 70 billion from the city, will be used to reach the goal of 80 to 90% of enrollment for children of all ages. And Mr. Jarasang, what can be done to achieve 100% enrollment for preschool education in Mongolia?
Well, first of all, I should say that for a developing country like Mongolia, where less than $4,000 per capita of GDP, it's covering all, in particular, preschool children to kindergarten system. Preschooling is very, very luxury thing. And we are allowing that luxury step. Many countries, for many countries at that level of development, this is a dream. However, we have a traditionally quite good education system in terms of enrollment. We have a 97% literacy rate, which is one of the highest in the world. However, we need a lot of things to do in this regard, because education is a really serious measure of economic development and quality of life. You know, countries like Chile or Norway, they spend 6% of their GDP per education. Mongolia spends around 5% of GDP and 16% in the year 2018, even 20% of our budget for education. So this country is really trying to do its best for education, at least in terms of enrollment. And one of the examples is what you said. Now we have, as you said, 241 children at preschool age from 2 to 5. And the state can provide, Ulaanbaatar city, for example, can provide 141 of them. 240,000 children is in Ulaanbaatar, of the preschool age. But out of them, 141 can have a kindergarten. That's the current capacity. But there is a 34,000 that are out of the system. And this year, the city and the Minister of Education, Inka Maglang, yesterday made a press conference after the government cabinet sessions. And he said that it will be they will be using our private kindergartens, and they will be renting places for kindergarten so that they can cover at least 90% of all this preschool age children. And again, it's a quite expensive thing. And, in terms of quality, that's a lot of things to do in Mongolia. According to the ministry in Kamarlang, for example, there is a need for 30,000 qualified engineers in the economy. But the whole system produces only 6,000 engineers per year. So quite mismatch of demand and supply of skilled people, educated people. That's one issue. The other thing is there is a combination of private and public education system in Mongolia. Initially, it was very much welcomed. Private schools made much better quality, and many students went to Harvard or the high-ranking Yale rank universities. But today, looking at back, this combined system of private, in particular the private and public schools, they have created a huge inequality among the society. Those who can afford private schools have completely different level of living standard. So it's a question how to combine these two sectors of education, whether we should go as Germany, all education to be state or public and free, or like in Finland as well. So there's a lot of questions come.
The minister has also mentioned the issue of overcrowding on September 1st of every year. September 1st is usually the start of the new school year for all public schools and universities. However, this year, school openings will be scattered to ease the overcrowding issue. There are 36,000 students that took the university entrance exams, and 30,000 are expected to enroll in university this year. And as you know, there's an influx of students in September to the capital city. And it seems that all higher education institutions are in Ulaanbaatar, so people from the countryside come in large quantities. So should we build more universities in different parts of the country or expand universities to the countryside? How do you think that we can fix this overpopulation problem for students?
Okay, there are two parts. One is a traffic jam. Usually it's impossible to move on September 1st in Ulaanbaatar city because it's overcrowded. And mostly it is caused by the school children or students' traffic. The cars, the moving them, etc. So traffic jam issue is solved according to the minister and city authority in one way. They say they will not allow all level of schools, all different type of schools to be commenced. Commencement of the schools will not start on September 1st. They will have a particular schedule so that the different schools open their academic year on different days. That's, it's of course, short-term solutions. Longer-term solutions is what you suggested. Yes, universities to be made around the other cities, in other kind of provinces. This year, a good example started, for example, in South Gobi, Aymag, which is the center of mining of Mongolia. There will be a branch of Mongolian Polytechnical University there, and many students will start their schools. The other measure is taken by the government, according to the minister, Inkam Galan. There are several universities already in the western provinces, eastern provinces, but a year or so the students spend in the provincial branch of the university, another 2 years in Ulaanbaatar city before graduation, or vice versa. This kind of relocation is considered, which is good stuff, but it's a matter of quality of teachers, living conditions for teachers, attracting talents there, and creating a full range facilities of international standard for students to spend their time and to have education properly. That's one. Secondly, it is again this traffic and education issue of accessibility. Accessibility means that the quality schools to be in every designated educational area. For example, because it doesn't work, the school in Ulaanbaatar city overpopulated, and it receives students from very far part of the Ulaanbaatar city where the quality is not sufficient or satisfied their teachers, their parents, their students. So they keep moving students from one end of the city to other end of the city, which creates a huge traffic. So just changing the commencement day doesn't guarantee that there will not be that terrible traffic jam during the whole winter or the student study time. So there are so many issues to be solved in terms of quality of schools and accessibility of them.
That is all for this week. Thank you as always, Mr. Jaralsagan.
Thank you very much for watching us, and see you next week at this time.